Um, the last video was cut off, so as I was saying, even good people who don't want to rape and torture will still use other people to get pleasure for themselves. This suggests that human beings are, by nature, fitted to pursue their own ends at the expense of the ends of others, at the expense of the well-being of others. And Hobbes understands this to be our primal animal nature, just like any other animal, given that we are animals. And if our great end goal is survival, that requires that we use and sacrifice others, because they will indeed get in the way of our own survival. If I give all my food to you guys, then I starve to death. At some point, I have to eat some food, which means you don't get it, which means that I'm being selfish. I'm taking food for me and not giving it to you. Well, the definition of that is selfishness, because I care about my own survival. So too do we all. So, Hobbes understands that in a state of nature, which is a state of war, that our end goal is survival, and we will do whatever is required for our survival. Okay? So, don't get too caught up in these romanticized notions of the goodness and compassion of mankind. Those things are certainly natural to us. We have the opportunity to be compassionate creatures. But in the state of nature, it's just not conducive to our survival. And we don't have the luxury. This is very important. We don't have the luxury of caring about any other goal but survival. If you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you notice that self-actualization is at the very top. You can't get through any of the levels towards self-actualization, the highest goal, the highest priority of mankind, unless you satisfy the lower levels. And the lowest level is ultimately survival. How can you care? How are you... You join a gang at 9 years old in inner city Chicago. Are you really expected, since you've been in a gang that whole time, and, before that, when you were 7 years old, your mother was being raped by this or that man, and you were being beaten. Can you really be expected when you're 15 to care about philosophy and education and grammar rules, things that I care about and I will tell you that you should care about, instead of survival? Can you really be expected to care about those kinds of things when your own survival is on the line every day? No. And I don't blame 15-year-olds who are in gangs since they were 9 years old, when they don't care about anything but their own survival. I don't blame them. Because what else are they supposed to do? They're supposed to care about virtue? When they're being beaten and had guns are being shot at them every day? That doesn't make any sense. The first thing you care about as a biological organism is just that you survive. Everything else, every other concern is a luxury. I live a very luxurious life. I get paid money to teach you about what it means to care about virtue. I get paid money to care about virtue. Do you know how rare that is? Most people on this planet only have the opportunity to care about their survival. Philosophy is a luxury. Even caring about getting more material possessions, which is way lower on the list than caring about virtue. Even that is an extraordinary luxury. Most people don't have that luxury because they have to worry about if they're going to survive and if their children are going to survive. The children that they've had because they've been raped. We do not live in a world that is peopled with sweet, kind, giving creatures. We live in a world of brutality. Even though it is not a state of nature, even with a civil authority, we still live in a world of brutality. Think about how it would be without a civil authority. It's going to be even worse. So, imagine what you would do. You wouldn't be sweet. If you started out that way, you would quickly lose that. You would quickly realize that it's going to get you killed. And you don't have the luxury of caring about anything other than not getting killed. And that's what Hobbes bases his entire discussion upon. So, now, if you look at so the next thing I've written up here, agreements aren't enough to keep our word. Why not? This is on page 32, the second full paragraph. But mere agreement is not enough. Once I agree not to steal your possessions on the condition that you agree not to steal mine, I nevertheless start to covet the nice things that you have. So my desires for your things will slowly weaken my resolve. So here's what happens. In the state of nature, we are all at war. I say this later, but let me just make this terrifically sexist point now. Hobbes is actually legitimately only talking about men, and I mean male human beings. Women and children are possessions only. The war occurs between male, adult human beings. All women are possessions, all children are possessions, and you will use them or kill them depending on how well they conduce to your survival. And when I say you and your, I'm talking only to male, adult human beings. You are the only ones who matter in this discussion. Now, that is, remember, Hobbes is writing in the 17th century. This is quite some time ago, and misogyny is prevalent. But he's also, I mean, even in the 17th century, 17th century England, he's an Englishman. Even at that time, women had some semblance of rights. So, he's also sort of taking the gender roles of the time and just making them extraordinarily extreme, bringing them to their zenith, what they would be if you, took them to their extreme in a state of nature, where there is no, first of all, civil authority, that is, there's no government, but there's also no social authority. Even though it's not illegal for me as a woman to be outspoken, it's not illegal. We don't have a law, again, in this country. In this country. We don't have a law against women speaking their voice. We still have social rules, social mores that dictate how men and women behave. And men have far more license, even in this country, in this culture, to behave in certain ways than women do. So Hobbes, so take that back to the 17th century, a good 400 years ago, when women had the mores for men and women we're even more stringent, and then push it all the way to its extreme. Women have zero rights. I mean, they're barely even considered to be human. And men have no rights just because there's no legal system that would give them rights. But men are the only ones who matter, who take charge, who have any kind of authority over anybody else. So that's the state of nature. So just keep in mind, when we talk about what happens to people in the state of nature, we're only talking about men. And by the way, race doesn't matter in this context at all. So all men, males, are equal in this respect, okay? The only issue is between sex, males and females, okay? Now, so what happens then is, in the state of nature, I am just trying to survive. I'm killing everybody. They're trying to kill me. I'm fighting back. I'm running away. I'm whatever. That's my whole life, every moment of every day. Survival. That's the only goal that I have. That's the only goal I can have, because I'm constantly on the lookout for these guys to come and kill me. Okay, pretend I'm a man, by the way. I'm not a woman, because as a woman, I would just be serving in whatever way I needed to do that. A man. Pretend I'm a man, because otherwise this discussion doesn't make any sense. Sexism. No good. Anyway. I don't blame Hobbes, by the way, and you shouldn't either. He's a product of his time. What was he supposed to be? A feminist? In the 17th century? Yeah, right. Don't blame these guys for that. They're just gonna be what everybody else is, just like we are now. Anyway. So I realize, for 1 minute, I use the noggin, and I say, okay, let me think through this logically. My end goal is survival. Brute survival. Just to not be killed. That's my goal. There seem to be two paths to take. One, I can engage in a constant war, battle with everybody else. I can just try to play the offensive, strike first, to ensure my survival by just eliminating all potential enemies. Or I can live peacefully and not kill or hurt anybody and ask them to do the same. Those seem to be my two options here. Which one is more conducive to survival? Okay, so either I have no rules, and we all just do whatever we want whenever we want to, which means we just kill each other and steal each other's stuff. I need your bushels of apples so that I can eat them and survive. And that's better than if you have those bushels of apples, because then you're eating them and surviving, and then you're going to steal mine at some point. So I need to steal yours first and kill you first, or better yet, take you as a slave, to be a shield, a human shield, and fight for me. Aha. But the problem is, there will always be more of you who are lurking, wanting to steal my apples, wanting to steal my wives, wanting to steal my slaves, and who might stab me in the back to do it. And there are always slaves I have who may rise up against me. It doesn't seem to conduce to my survival to engage only in war. Seems like the best thing is to make some kind of agreement. I won't hurt you if you don't hurt me. I promise. We'll pinky swear. We'll leave each other alone. You let me do my thing, I'll let you do your thing. Either of us will kill each other or steal each other's stuff. We'll be peaceful. We'll be neighbors. How about that? Well, it looks like if we could actually keep those agreements, that would work pretty damn well for our survival, because we wouldn't be threatening each other. And it does work for a little bit. But eventually, I noticed that you've got a new wife. And my, she's prettier than my 5 wives. And you're sleeping, and I see her roaming about the house. Maybe I want to go and get her. Because my wives are boring. In fact, I think I'm going to kill a couple of them. They're weighing me down, right? They're not giving me any more kids to fight for me, to be a little mini army for me. They're too old. I'm going to get me a new wife. But that means I gotta break our agreement. But, you know what? I realized something. I'm thinking about breaking our agreement. And I know you're just like me. You're human, just like I am. You want things just like I do, specifically survival. I know you want that just as much as I do. If I'm thinking about breaking the agreement, I bet you've been thinking of it too. Uh-oh. You're planning a sneak attack, aren't you? You're looking at one of my wives, aren't you? I guess I better run you through before you can do it to me. I know you've been thinking about it because I've been thinking about it. So I kill you, and I take your wife. I break the agreement. Why? Because they were just words. There's no consequence if I break the agreement. And I know if I'm thinking about it, you've been thinking about it. Because you're a man too. You're a human being too. You're a biological organism too. And you want survival just as much as I do. If my desire for survival makes me think deeply and seriously about breaking the agreement, I know your desire for survival has made you think the same. And the best way to survive is to play the offense, not the defense. I can't wait for you to come and try to steal one of my wives in the middle of the night. I need to do it first. So we don't get out of the state of war. Because even if we make these verbal agreements, there's no good reason not to go back on them. In fact, the suspicion is still maintained because there's literally nothing but words keeping you from betraying our agreement. And I've been thinking about betraying it. Because it would be so easy to just kill you and take your wife and be done with the whole agreement, right? I know you've been thinking about it. You're rational just like I am. You have desires just like I do. How do we deal with this now? Well, looks like we might be less inclined to break these agreements, these verbal agreements, if there were some serious consequence to doing so. I guess that means we have to institute some kind of president or governing body who we all begrudgingly say, all right, we realize that what we want here is survival. War is not going to allow us to survive for very long. Without traffic rules, it's not going to be that long until somebody runs me over. I'm not going to get from point A to point B unscathed for very many years. I want very badly for you guys to all have to abide by rules and for me to have to abide by none of them. That would be perfect. That would be amazing. I would love it if you guys had limitations on your behavior, but I could just do whatever the hell I wanted. But you're never going to agree to that. I guess that means that we all have to mutually agree. I have to suck it up. I have to agree as just as well as you do, not to hurt each other, so that we can achieve this end goal of survival. But I know that those words aren't going to be enough. Eventually, you're going to go back on it. I'm going to know you're going to go back on it, so I'm going to try at least to strike first. If I figure out first that you're still not to be trusted. So, begrudgingly, I realize we've got to put someone in a position over all of us. So that he can say, if you go back on this verbal agreement, you lose everything. You go to prison for the rest of your life, or you get the death penalty, or something, right? We've got to institute some kind of sovereign. Some sovereign authority. Some authority that we agree upon will be greater than all of us, and to whom we give up that particular right to do whatever I want to do, whenever I want to do it. Notice, my survival is far more likely, first of all, as a woman, my survival is far more likely in the United States than in the Congo, the rape capital of the world, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the 21st century. Look it up. If you're a woman, you have been raped, literally, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of times. There are women who have been raped with the barrel of guns. And had the guns shot inside of them. I'm not making this up. This is in large part due to the fact that they have no legitimate civil authority. They have nobody to hold them to agreements. The agreement to let you live so long as you let me live. We even have that here in the United States. And men and women are treated brutally, despite the fact that we have these agreements and a civil authority to enforce them in one way or another. And we still have, everybody has a corrupt government, but the United States government is far less corrupt than the one in other parts, in other countries of the world. The Congo is one that comes to mind as a woman. I feel very lucky to live under this government. My ability to survive, to live a life that goes beyond mere survival, that can actually amount to something, is only possible because we have a civil society. Because we each say We're going to have these laws and rules, and if we don't abide by them, we agree that we will be held accountable for not having abided by them. I've gotten a traffic ticket in my day for speeding or parking before 5 o'clock or some nonsense, and the meter ran out. And when the cop came, or I had the ticket on the window or whatever, I said, yep, I was totally going 10 miles over the speed limit. I know it. Yep, give me the ticket. I agree that we have to have safety rules and regulations for driving because it's very dangerous. I broke them. Give me the ticket. I will pay it. I've never been upset about it because I knew that the rules were there for a good reason. Because driving 8,000 miles an hour drunk like a moron is not conducive to my survival. So if I do it to other people, children who are in the back of a car, you're damn right I deserve to be punished. I agree to that. And I know that it's there for the good of myself as well as others who are in those cars. I should not be driving like an idiot, nor should anybody else. I agree to that because I care about my survival. And I am willing to sacrifice my right to drive in any way I choose, whenever I want to, so that you guys also sacrifice your rights, which means that my survival is far more likely. I'm 100% willing, and when the cop has given me a speeding ticket, I've said, yep, I'll take it. Give me the ticket. I will pay it gladly because I was an idiot. I did something wrong. And as a woman, I certainly realize that I am lucky to live in a society that cracks down on all kinds of criminality, rape being one of them. I'm glad I don't live in a society where there's no civil authority and people rape and rape and rape women all the time. I'm glad that if that does happen to me, that I have some semblance of recourse. Even in this society where people who are raped, men and women are raped, don't even have that much recourse, that there's something. I'm glad to live under a government. Because without any government, there is no protection from others. Because our agreements, in words, are not going to do it. We have to have consequences to keep us in fear. This is what Hobbes says. And I do think there's a decent amount in there to consider. Well, I'll wait on that. Okay, so look, the next portion, let's see, the third full paragraph on page 32. For Hobbes, morality is a purely instrumental compromise. Instrument, a tool to do something else. So a piano is a tool I use to make music, right? An instrument. So instrument means tool. A hammer is also a tool that I use to do something else that I really want to do. Put the nail on the wall so I can hang the picture on it. Okay? It's merely instrumental. It's not my final goal. My final end goal is not to take a hammer and go like this with it. That's... what? No. It's to hammer the nail into the wall so I can have a pretty picture on the wall. That's my end goal here. So, morality, in Hobbes' understanding of the world, is a purely instrumental, it's a tool, compromise position that we reluctantly accept because we lack the power to achieve our ends independently. Without you guys on my team, my end goal of survival is not something I can really achieve on my own. If you guys are all against me and you just want to kill me, there are, what, like 30 of you in this class? Pretty sure you're going to be able to do it. I'm one person. So if I don't get you guys on my team fighting for my survival because I'm willing to fight for yours, I don't get to survive. You're going to get me. And the rest of us are going to get you. We need to be on a team. Safety in numbers, right? That's the idea. Teamwork. Teamwork is always more conducive to the survival of the individual and the whole than individualism, right? In terms of brute survival, okay? So, my survival is not going to happen if I'm the only one who cares about it. I need other people to care too. So, as he says then, it's second best, this whole being in a civil society and relinquishing a couple of some rights that I really, really want to have. The right to do whatever I want, whenever I want to do it. That's second best. What I would prefer is that I could maintain all those rights, but you would give yours up. But you're never going to agree to that. Why the hell would anybody agree to that? You're going to say, no. If I'm doing this, you got to do it. The whole point here is that everybody get on the same team so that nobody is hurting each other so that we can all survive. I'm not going to agree to it if you don't. So, it's second best. But, it's certainly the best opportunity for me to achieve my end goal of survival. Okay? Now, go down one line. There's no right or wrong in the state of nature because, according to Hobbes, nothing is inherently so. Right and wrong are defined simply by our agreements. So, you see what I put here on the notes. All is amoral. Nothing is moral or immoral in the state of nature because that a moral system is what makes things moral or immoral. They are rules. Sharing is good. Being selfish is bad or evil or wrong. Cruelty is bad. Well, it's only bad if we've decided that it's bad, but cruelty may indeed conduce to my survival. If I get the reputation of being a very cruel enemy, people are going to be much less likely to mess with me, which means that I'm more likely to survive because people are afraid of me. So cruelty can indeed conduce to my survival in the state of nature. But we realize we have to give that stuff up in a civil society, because if I live in the state of nature, people are going to be more likely to be cruel to me, to come after me, to take me down. If I live in the civil society, even if I'm not cruel, I'm still more likely to survive, because everybody else has made this agreement not to kill me. So long as I keep up my end of the deal, they keep up theirs. Assuming we're all afraid of the death penalty or something, okay, some other punishment. So, everything is amoral. There is no morality outside of a civil society. In the state of nature, prior to human beings becoming civilized, creating a society, instituting some semblance of government, in Hobbes' words, a sovereign. Everything is amoral. Remember, I made those three distinctions: moral, immoral, amoral. Moral and immoral suggest a system, a moral system of rules, right and wrong. I may just either go with them, moral, or go against them, immoral. But there is some kind of system, some rules and regulations in place. In the state of nature, there's no system. There are no rules. So everything is amoral. Morality does not exist in the state of nature. Morality is merely a tool that is used in the civil society to allow us to survive. Morality is instrumental only. There is nothing intrinsically good about compassion. If it conduces to survival, then we should do it. If it does not, we should not. In the state of nature, compassion does not conduce to survival, and therefore it is not good to do. In the civil society, it does conduce to survival, and therefore it becomes morally good, virtuous. Okay? There is no evil man in the state of nature, no matter how much like Ted Bundy or Gacy or Dahmer or Hitler he may be. He is never morally evil. You only become good or evil in a civil society when moral rules have been instituted. Now, so morality is, as I say in the notes, morality is purely contractual. It is an agreement we make with one another and is not objective or universal. So this Hobbes is not interested in religion in any way. He sees religion as just another tool to allow for survival by deeply instituting morality. He sees it as merely a tool. There is no morality handed down from God. In fact, that's a nice little tale that you tell to get people to be more willing to behave morally. It's just a little story or fable that you tell to make them more fearful about doing bad things, breaking down the civil society. But it's not real. It's ridiculous. So that's what he thinks about that. There's nothing objective or universal, like all human beings can somehow deeply feel that compassion is better than cruelty and it's built into us. Oh my God, no. Compassion is a natural ability of human beings, but it's only worthwhile insofar as it conduces to survival. In the state of nature, it doesn't. In the civil society, it does. So in the state of nature, if you use compassion, you're an idiot. In the civil society, if you don't, you're an idiot. That's all. There's nothing intrinsically, objectively, universally good or evil about behaving this or that way. Insofar as it conduces to survival, as a behavior conduces to survival, it's a good thing to do. Not morally speaking, practically speaking. Insofar as it doesn't conduce to survival, it is practically a stupid thing to do. That's all. But we make up these little fantasies about moral rules and God and Jesus and so on in the civil society, all of which is there to make us more likely to behave in a way that conduces to survival. That's all. So that's why this chapter you'll see is called Contract Ethics. We make a contract, an agreement that we will all abide by these rules. So long as the rules conduce to our survival, they're good rules to follow. And the sovereign is the only one who makes no agreement. He does not agree to abide by these rules. He has one duty, and he's the only person. But for Hobbes, a sovereign is one guy. You can't have a team of guys, okay? Because they then will have their own state of nature, and they will need their own sovereign. So sovereign is always a strict, singular monarchy. One guy. And it has to be a man, because women, he doesn't care about women, okay? The sovereign does not make the same agreements that we do. We make a contract with each other and with the sovereign. The sovereign does not make a contract with us. The only duty the sovereign has is to keep the peace. If, in order to do that, he has to kill 20 virgins every year, if that's the way that conduces to the survival of the whole best, so be it. He can make up any rules, any moral ideas that he wants to do. So long as he keeps the peace, he's doing his job. And Hobbes is actually pretty particular about this, that, okay, so he was writing 400 years ago, but for him, at the time that he was writing, prior to his time, he looks at history and he says anybody who overthrew a government that perhaps was tyrannical, but was nevertheless keeping the people alive, was unjust. If somebody overthrew a tyrannical government that was at the very least keeping the people alive, that overthrowing of that government was unjust. Because the only duty the government has is to allow your survival. If you live in squalor, but you're still surviving, I'm still maintaining my responsibility as a sovereign toward you. You're alive, aren't you? You know what the state of nature is like? You're lucky if you're alive for 20 years. I mean, that's unbelievable. To be alive for 20 years in the state of nature. You know how many times you could procreate in 20 years? Your life expectancy is about 12. You might have a baby in that time, if you're lucky. Of course, the only reason you'd want to have a baby is to have somebody to fight for you, to be a soldier, to be a human shield for you. Otherwise, they just hold you back. Because that's all that you care about. Brute survival. If, as a sovereign, I give you the opportunity to live until you're 50 and to have a number of children and to maybe love them, even though you guys are struggling and living in a shanty and have very little food, but you spend the nights together and you love each other and you learn from each other and you have the opportunity once in a while to think about God or what it means to be alive. Well, that is worlds beyond the state of nature. I have certainly done my job as sovereign if I've given you those opportunities. Even though I'm taxing you to hell, I take all of your money, and you're barely surviving. It's better than the state of nature. I've done my duty. It's up to you to do the rest. You made an agreement because your only concern was survival. I gave it to you. You can't overthrow me, and if you do, it's unjust. I kept up my end of the bargain. Right? This is how Hobbes sees it. Society is not natural to human beings, and it will always fall. Because human beings are solitary creatures that are ultimately selfish. So if a sovereign maintains some kind of group ethic, that is unbelievable. You better not overthrow him. He has done the unthinkable. Interesting. Hobbes, by the way, I recognize that this isn't a text about ethics and moral philosophy, and he is certainly doing moral philosophy, but ultimately Hobbes is a political philosopher. The Leviathan, his book, is ultimately political philosophy, and it's very important, it's very intriguing, and it is something about which we should think deeply, about our own natures, about the tenuous nature of this society, what human beings are like, what kind of organisms we are. I think we romanticize what we're like a lot, and that can be to our detriment. If I don't know who I truly am, how can I prepare for the behavior I may one day exhibit? Behavior that I don't want to exhibit. Preparation requires knowledge. And it's unhelpful to live under the delusion that human beings are creatures who by their very natures care about others more than we care about ourselves. The only potential interest for the other at the expense of myself in the state of nature, in natural human existence, is a mother to her offspring. But since both women and children are mere possessions, it doesn't really matter if she's willing to sacrifice herself for her child, because it's the man who ultimately, whose survival is the one that matters in the state of nature. Women and children are only aids to the survival of men. So Hobbes doesn't care about that very much. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so I'm going to stop this here. We have 2 weeks on this, and this is a long video, and I'm tired. So I'm going to stop here. And then make sure, okay, remember this. You stop reading on page 33. See where there's a break between these paragraphs? There's a little space. The rest of it is about John Rawls, and we're not reading him. In this chapter, we're only reading Hobbes, the excerpt from Hobbes' Leviathan, which begins on page 36, and it ends, oh dear God, on page 43. We're not reading A Theory of Justice by John Rawls, which begins on page 44. Don't read that, so you don't have to read the stuff in the introduction, in Kaufman's introduction about Rawls, okay? And we're going to spend, I think I put 2 weeks for chapter 4. Funnily enough, now I'm not certain why, but that's okay. So I will provide more... obviously, more videos for the rest of Hobbes. So the actual text, which begins on page 36, it's tough to read, certainly in the sense that he uses the same word and spells it 3 different ways. They didn't, at the time, they didn't have a standardized spelling for words. They didn't standardize their spelling in the 17th century. So this is how people wrote. And they didn't standardize their punctuation either. You notice there are commas just everywhere. And it drives me crazy because I'm a grammar Nazi, as it were. It's really annoying. It's very frustrating. So in that regard, this text is difficult to read. Try to just sort of read over the commas. That will be helpful. Don't apply our grammar and punctuation rules to this text because you will be lost. And okay, in general, it's tough to read, and I'm sorry. So try to read it, and I have notes, and I'm gonna put up all the notes that I've already written, a number of which are on the text itself, so you can start looking at them as you're reading, and then I'll provide another video in the next few days, another, I think, 2 videos for this, in the next couple of days that will translate that stuff for you, okay? So, good luck. Bye, guys.